Yeah, see, Emma is so hungry. She's eating soya sauce, drinking soya sauce. Ayo, so hungry. Hello, good afternoon. Okay, still morning lah, but it's approaching lunchtime. Okay, hi, you're watching Grexby Eats. And we're here at Berseh Food Centre to talk about this famous, very popular stall, the福州宝华oyster cake. The stall is one of 3 remaining eateries selling the hard-to-find Fuzhou's night of oyster cake in Singapore. It has been covered extensively in the media, but in this case, the hype is justified, as their oyster cake is arguably the most captivating of all the 3 stalls that still operate in Singapore. The snack originates from Fuzhou, China, and it's probably common there, but it's rare in Singapore. And it is a street snack where seafood, meat, and vegetables or herbs are actually covered in a rice soybean batter, then deep fried. This stall started operating at Sam Leong Road in 1986 before increasing rentals forced them to relocate to their current location at Berseh Food Centre in 2016. The stall is run by Jenny Ong Po Hua, who is 57 years old, and Tan Hock Teck, her husband, who is 66 years old. But the recipe of the oyster cake is actually much older than that, because Ong's grandmother used to sell oyster cakes at the junction of Ophir Road in the 1950s. Ong, who is Hock Chew, used to help her grandmother at her stall when she was a 12-year-old girl back then. A fire burned down the stall in the 1970s, and Ong's grandmother decided to permanently stop her business as a result. But then over the years, many ex-customers and neighbours have been badgering them to start selling their oyster cakes again. So Ong and her husband decided to resurrect the business 15 years later. So come, let's have a taste. Hello, 可以 order 吗？2个小的，2个大的。大的要等。可以。He's now making it, so yeah, just gotta wait. This is the buzzer by the way. Okay, I'm back from the stall, and we're back with 4 oyster cakes, or rather 5 lah. I ordered 2 of the normal ones, and I ordered 2 of the upsized ones, and my wife wants one, so I bought one for her. Okay, instead of just eating one and describing the food, what I did instead is I actually pried open the one to sort of like show you what the ingredients are like inside lah. So a couple of notes, they will actually ask you whether you want to cut the oyster cake in half for easier eating. But I would say leave it uncut so that you keep as much moisture as you can inside the snack. And as a bit of history, the cakes actually used to use clams in Ong's grandmother's time, but they had difficulty obtaining a good supply of clams, so they switched over to using oyster sauce from Korea instead, which are these. Very nice. The oysters are sort of like small to medium oysters. They're not raw obviously, but they're nicely cooked through. And then you get prawns, which are sort of like small to medium. Prawns are seasoned actually. Okay, the prawns are actually treated to make them crunchy and bouncy. So they either rinse them in cold water, or they marinate them with a little bit of egg white, tapioca starch and baking soda. It basically raises the pH level up a little bit. Some people like the crunchiness, some people don't. There's a little bit of mincemeat inside. Wonderfully marinated, very nicely so. And it's fatty as well. Then you have the chopped Chinese celery. There's a bit of butter on it lah. So there's a little bit of crunch to it, and that lovely celery flavour going throughout the whole dish. And then tasting the batter alone, the edges are obviously going to be the crispiest. Very crunchy. It's also marinated as well. It's got a nice soft inside texture too, lots of moisture. Perhaps it's a bit bready, very slightly. So taking a bite into the whole snack as it is, you get 2 versions. You get the peanut and you get the ikan bilis. White bait lah. It's basically white bait. So taking a bite into the peanut one. Wow. There's a lot more batter as opposed to some other oyster cake places, but it's still nice. It's still a fair amount of moisture inside, and you get more or less moisture depending on where you bite. If you bite into the mincemeat or you bite into the oyster, you get a lot more moisture. But the overall freshness of the snack is very apparent. The seasoning is kind of like light to medium, and you have a lot of the natural taste of the ingredients. You can taste the Chinese celery, the mincemeat, the oyster, or the peanuts. The prawn doesn't really have that strong of a taste. Taste the batter too. So as I said, the batter has got a nice crunch to it, and it stays crunchy. And I think it's the sort of crunchiness which will actually travel quite well. You can actually order this takeaway. Regarding the moisture, right, it's generally moist, but sometimes, depending on how he makes it, right, if he puts on the batter a little bit too thick, it can be a bit bready, like over here. But generally, it is fine. But just take note. So the batter is apparently 3 kinds of flour, and they actually blend soybeans with it as well. Whatever it is very nicely done. So I just ate the peanut one, which is actually the traditional topping. But they do offer an ikan bilis one, which is actually a relatively new addition. Because apparently Jenny Ong actually likes ikan bilis, that's why she added it in. And it's nice, both versions are nice. The peanuts provide a nice textural crunch, while the ikan bilis provides a little more crispy saltiness. So I have the ikan bilis one here, okay, and I'm going to dip it into some chili. Looks very good. Very nice. So the chili sauce which the stall actually serves is actually stall made. They make it themselves, and it's on the side in a bottle, and you can take as much as you want, within reason obviously, but it's actually not traditional. Back in Ong's grandmother's time, the oyster cakes used to be eaten as it is. The flavour of the chili itself is dry prawn savouriness, a bit sweet, maybe a very slight tanginess, very slight oil richness, spicy obviously, a bit gritty. The chili is a nice addition. It adds a light spiciness. It also adds a little bit more moisture to the dish so that it doesn't get dry. But of course, if you have it with the chili, it will mask a lot of the natural flavours in the oyster cake. So bear that in mind. So as I said before, there's the normal version of the oyster cake, but there's also an upsized version, which is this. So you can tell it is an upsized version because it's got both ikan bilis and peanuts on top. So it basically means that you get more ingredients. Because the ladle spoon which they fry the oyster cake in, right, it's the same. You actually get less batter and get more ingredients in it. And because there are more ingredients, there's actually a little bit more moisture in the upsized one. You get an additional prawn and an additional oyster. So there are 2 prawns and 2 oysters in one. Plus, as I said, you get both sprinklings of peanuts and ikan bilis. And it only costs 50 cents more, which I think is incredible value for money. Here's another shot. You can see there's a lot of ingredients in here. So a bit more about the stall's owners. The husband actually comes down a bit earlier to do all the preparations. Okay, marinate the prawn, marinate the minced pork, sort out the ingredients and so on and so forth. And then he does the initial frying. Maybe he fries about 1 batch, and then the wife will come later at about 11. Before that, she has to take care of her grandkids apparently. And then she will fry for the rest of the day until 6 p.m. Now, do note that this stall is very, very, and I mean very popular. So the wait for your order can be as long as an hour on average. I actually waited very, very short. I think about 10 minutes or so, which is fine. But that's rare. That's very rare. Thankfully, you can call them to make a pre-order. They have contact numbers, and I'll put them in the video description below. Okay, done. 4 oyster cakes for lunch. Goodness. That's a lot, man. So, would I travel half across Singapore to eat here? It's a definite yes. Firstly, Fuzhou oyster cake is quite hard to find in Singapore in the first place. Not many stalls do it. There are only 3 doing it. And to find one that actually does it well is a big bonus. Plus, the prices they charge are actually, well, to me, it's pretty reasonable. Especially when you consider that there's huge demand for the oyster cakes here, and they could easily charge a much higher price for it. Another note is that apparently Post Kids have expressed no interest in taking over the stall, although I believe that they are rather young, so that may change in the future. But if it doesn't change, it means that they're the last generation actually doing oyster cake here, at least. So enjoy the snack while you can. So thanks for watching another episode of Gregsby Eats, where I eat through the whole of Singapore. If you liked this episode, if you like, subscribe, comment below, click on the notifications bell so that you know when a new episode is in. And I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.